Hey everybody, thank you for joining. I'm Yolanda, or Mrs. Y. Martin. Welcome to Transformation Tuesdays. What's up, hey? What's up, Elle? Tonight we are going to talk about it taking a village to raise a child. I've been trying to touch on this topic for a minute, and for some reason I just keep going over on my time and not getting to it. But today we're going to touch it first so that we get to it. Also, I want to talk about what it looks like to have a village in 2020. So we're going to touch that. And then I want to also talk about domestic violence and abuse today. So I'll be doing that. I am going to have a co-host today, a guest come on. Mr. Born to Reach is going to be joining us for a point of view of a male. So we'll have that. I'm gonna actually see if I can add him really quickly here. He's not on yet. So I'm gonna go ahead and just wait for, I'm gonna try to invite him in just to make sure we get this rolling. And then when I see him, I'll go ahead and try to add him in. But just to start the topic on it taking a village, I did a survey. I asked several people, and a lot of people said yes, it does take a village to raise a child. They agree that, but they had a lot of stipulations on what that actual what that actually looks like, as far as who's around your children, making sure that they're having the right foundation around them, which I agree 100%. You should definitely make sure that you have a stable environment around your children when you're considering people to be your village. I didn't really get any no's. To me, I think the village somewhat from what it used to be has disintegrated a little bit. I know that we have people who are close to us, but that village feel that I used to have as a youth, where, you know, even the milkman would look in on your kids and everything and just make sure they're good. That village type of scenario is kind of, in my opinion, gone. I haven't seen that lately. However, there are, talking to several people, there are plenty of people that actually do come in and help you raise your kids and make sure you're good and make sure your kids are good and make sure you get those breaks. And to me, that's super important. What's up, Q? So I think that I wanted to just ask a couple more people, what does the village look like for you? So in the comment section, while we're just waiting for Born to Reach to come in, I did invite him, just give me a little bit about what does the village look like to you? What's up, TW Mac? What does that village look like to you? Hey, Miss Cajun A. And is in 2020, do you feel like it's the same as it used to be, or is it completely different than what it used to be when we were young, or even what your grandparents considered a village? Is that completely different than what we see in 2020? Are people just kind of in that whole I'm a mind my business mode, is what I call it? I feel like we've evolved to a very selfish kind of, I'm gonna worry about my kids, you worry about your kids type of situation. I'm gonna worry about me and mine, and you worry about yours. That's how I kind of see it, just knowing from, I used to live in Ohio, so the feel and the culture from where I live now is Arizona. It's completely different. I remember going outside and I was only allowed to go like around the corner, but you had to be in when the street lights came on. We did go outside and play, and so when we went out inside and played, everybody knew all the kids in the neighborhood. They knew who we were. They all looked after us. That was, to me, my village, along with my church family. Everybody in the church knew who I was. Nobody in the church was just watching after me that didn't know my mom and my mom's mom, and, you know, that didn't happen to fill seats. So it's completely, to me, different. So I'm gonna read some of these comments. Elle says, village is what you make it, how you assemble it. I agree with that. TW Max says, a village is a no judgment and always supportive. Villages have definitely changed, but people take advantage of village people's priorities priorities for those village people, I think you're talking about, are wrong. And I agree with that too. Some people want to be a part of your village, or say that they're a part of your village, or you assume them to be a part of your village, and they're really not as supportive as you need them to be. They don't step up when it really when it's really time to be that village. You don't see those people step up and really like make sure you're good. You know, when things start to go bad, sometimes they run away. And to me, that's not what a village is. It's a village stands up for each other. A village is support system that is very dependable. So some of us may have thought we had a bigger village, but then when it came down to it, we realized who our village really was. And I think that happens to a lot of people. Elle says supportive, but not of bad behavior, holds me accountable, looks out for me even when I'm not looking out for myself, tells me what I don't want to hear when I need to hear it. Absolutely. Q says, you have to create the village these days. Back in the day, it was formed. We all supported each other. I agree, Q. That's my point. Like, I feel like that has definitely become the scenario. Like, back in the day, you just, and this is just for me personally, I lived in a predominantly black neighborhood, and we all took care of each other. We didn't, go outside the neighborhood to make sure everybody was good. We all took care of each other. My grandmother was the grandma of the neighborhood. Everybody knew my grandma. So for me, it was easy for me to connect with people because everyone knew her. Miss Cajun says, a village for me is accountability partners, people that help keep family support and dynamics alive, whether blood or not, fellowship, and show up for life events. I agree. A support system, I think, is all the way around what everyone's saying. That is, like you said, what you make it these days. But it used to not be that way. So I just wanted to kind of draw attention to that. Like, is there more we could be doing to build our communities up? Even on a small level. Like, I know for me, when I see a child, I don't think, to me, the village is, I don't care whose kid it is, what color they are, anything. All the children around me are a part of my village. That's how I see children. When I see children, they don't learn things they're learning from us as adults. No matter who you are, no matter, when they see someone older than them, elder to them, they're looking at you, regardless of if you're in their permanent house or not. So for me, a village is all of us as elders making sure that we are taken care of. If you see somebody's child, I'm gonna give you an example. When this whole corona thing was going on, I saw a 3-year-old outside. I didn't know this little boy, never met him in my life. He was outside, he was playing with his toys, no parent out there, no nothing. And we all know, like, to me, in my head, I said that's a red flag, because anything could happen. Like, nobody's outside with this kid. There was no screen door, nobody could hear this kid. And I pull up in my car in this random place, I'm way away from my house, and I see this little boy playing on his porch. I literally was delivering a basket, and I watched this little boy the whole time I was there. I literally sat there and not stalking him, but making sure that nobody approached him, making sure he was good, making sure nobody, took advantage of this little boy or like even tried to talk to him. But it's in my peripheral. If I see a child, I'm looking out. And I think that's what kind of behavior we need to instill, whether we're close to somebody or not. I miss that kind of village. I want somebody to stand up and be like, excuse me, do you know that kid? If somebody walks up to some stranger's child. But there's definitely more, like Cajun A just said, there's more we can do, always more. But I wanted to bring awareness and just kind of talk about it a little bit. I still don't have Mr. Born to Reach coming in, but I will go ahead and start touching some of the topics, and then if he comes in later, then we'll discuss it with them later. If anyone wants to join, just let me know and I will add you as well. I don't mind talking about these topics with anyone else. Is there anything else on the village topic you want to talk about? I will talk about the village a little bit more as we're talking about domestic abuse, but for now, that was just basically what I wanted to cover. I want to cover that, let's look into doing a little more, especially when it comes to the village of a child and raising children. As a society, as a community, I feel like we can do a lot more. I'm not saying stalk people's kids. I'm saying just look out for them. If you see somebody's kid that is just out there on their own, and maybe that parent is not doing all they can, you don't know what's on their plate, make sure that person is good, that child is good, at least while they're in your view. Because I know my elders did that for me, and there's a lot of stuff I could have got into, or people that could have attacked me or anything, if those elders and that wasn't around me. Let's see. All right, so jumping into abuse, guys, I wanted to start with signs of abuse. When you're dealing with signs of abuse, one of the biggest signs I noticed when I saw people dealing with abusive relationships was isolation. The first thing an abuser usually does is isolate their victim, or, you know, spouse, whoever it is, the person who is under their abuse. They isolate them. They isolate them from family. They isolate them from friends. They isolate them even from coworkers sometimes. They try to get you solo and alone and away from people that you feel confident around. That is a common thing. With abusers, for whatever reason, if you ever feel like they're super jealous or controlling, that's another sign of abuse, or potential to turn into a domestic situation. Also, if you notice that they are super clingy, that can also be a potential. If someone doesn't want you to leave anywhere or go anywhere, or they always have to be up under you, that's controlling a little bit. So I would say, for me, that's a sign. Some of the signs that people brought up was they tell you not to be around your friends, which is something that I brought up. Another thing that someone brought up was they may be super, I don't want to say clingy, but they may feel like a past experience. So maybe they feel like in a past experience, you know, my ex used to abuse me, and you're noticing you following that pattern again. Or you notice that your mother or your father used to deal with this situation, and now you're dealing with the same things that made you shy away from being around that. In the comments, is there anybody who has a direct sign of abuse as far as when you see it? What about when you're seeing it from the outside? What are some things that you've noticed come to hand? Anybody out there? And I am one time going to go ahead and try to reach Mr. Born to Reach. Is not here. I don't know where he went. It's Q. Q, are you still here? You want to join? Just to kind of weigh in on the topic from a male's point of view. As far as we're on signs of domestic abuse. L says, afraid to speak in front of their partners. Yes. If you ever notice someone like can't have an opinion in a forum, in an open forum, as far as like maybe there's a family conversation, maybe there's just friends, and you notice they're timid and really quiet when they didn't used to be, that's a sign, definitely. When someone is holding back on who they are or who you know them to be, that's a huge flag, especially when you've known them for a long time. L also says they flinch when they raise their hand or raise their voice. Sometimes I've noticed that even when with the children being abused, that even if you go to like get close to them, they'll flinch, or they're really like jumpy or anxious, or if you mention, for children specifically, or even sometimes adults, if you mention, I'm going to call your parent, or I'm going to, sometimes with black families, honestly, I'm gonna be 100%, we know we get in a butt whooping, we don't want you to call them anyway. But in some scenarios, when it gets so bad, when you mention a parent or you mention an interaction where they may be confronted about maybe something going on in school, or you want to ask questions about maybe something that you've noticed, when they get super defensive or super like, please don't, then, or avoiding certain questions, then maybe that could definitely be a sign. Another question that I had asked in the comments was, would you report the abuse? The people who did answer, which honestly I think a lot of people are afraid or don't discuss domestic abuse or feel uncomfortable about it because maybe they've either been through it or it's just a touchy subject for them. A lot of people didn't answer, but the people that did answer did say, yes, I would report it. I would report it. And I will give you, for me, I would report it. If I didn't know that, even if I didn't know them, I know there's a lot of, like I said before, the mind your business in 2020. But to me, no. What if that was your child? What if that was your sister, cousin, mom, auntie, and they're not speaking out to the family? They're not telling the family what's going on with them. Why would you do it then in that scenario? Would you report that, somebody is getting their butt kicked? I've seen it out in the streets, and I have actually called and said, hey, there is a domestic, and I'll tell them the crossroads and I'll leave it at that. I'm not gonna, as a woman, I'm not able to step out and get in the middle of that, nor would I want to. But from the distance, I did call and say, hey, you need to be aware, no one's out here. There is a domestic. And I don't say whether it is a male or female, because honestly, I feel like it could be either or. I don't know the situation. So I just draw attention to it and let the proper people handle it, especially if I don't know those people. However, if it happened in front of me, there's no way I'm going to sit there and let you do something without reporting it. Now, in some of those scenarios, I feel like people are scared because they feel like, well, I don't want to lose my friend. I've been friends with this person for so long. I don't want to lose my friend. Or I don't want to get in the middle of it because what if I become a part of the conflict? Or I'm going to cause more problems for them. But if you don't say anything and the behavior continues, at least you're creating a window for that person to make a move, versus them being too scared to make a move because they feel like nobody's paying attention and they're trapped. That's a whole nother scenario. That's just my personal opinion. What do you guys feel about reporting? Would you report? Well, there's not that many people who are going to answer right now, but would you report the situation? I'm going to bring, let me see. I'm going to try to bring Q on. I don't know if you're not really speaking much, but I'm going to try. And if I can, then I'm going to go ahead and have L, if you're available, nod or wave at me. Give me a second. All right. So as we're talking about the next one, L says yes, she would. The next topic that I wanted to talk about was what are other ways to stop abuse? And I ask this because some people don't feel comfortable with alerting the police or calling even CPS or any of that, but they would step in. Like, I know my husband has witnessed, or we both witnessed something, and he stepped in and said, hey, you're not going to put hands on this female in front of me. Like, it's disrespectful, and basically was telling the guy, you don't put your hands on a female situation. I know several guys who would step up and say, hey, get in between it instead of waiting for a police officer or even letting the police handle it. So I feel like that's another solution. I didn't get any other solutions as to how to handle it, but sometimes family, I know in the olden days or before my time, people would create like a mediation. They would bring families together and say, hey, this behavior you're doing, or all the men would huddle around the man who is the abuser or whatever and have a discussion like, what is going on with you? What is the problem? And try to fix that. You don't see that often anymore either. And one of the things that I did want to talk about as far as see. Give me a second. Q. I'm gonna go ahead and add Q to the live. Um, One of the things that I wanted to talk about is that you don't see that very much anymore. Hey, you.
Hey,
How you doing?
I'm alright. I'm crazy.
Can you hear me? I
I
just
can hear you.
realized when you jumped on here that my headphones aren't even working. So I've had them on this whole time and they're not working. So, anyways, I can hear you. So, what
Okay.
happened with the last two scenarios? Did you want to add anything as far as signs other than what I had already said?
You gotta forgive me because like people were calling, so I was like, it was going in and out. So if you give me those, then I can throw my opinion on it.
Okay.
So what were the last two scenarios?
So the first scenario was signs. We talked about signs of abuse. And I was talking
Mm-hmm.
about some of the things as far as isolation and jealousy, different things like that. Um, I don't know if you agreed with the things I said or if you had anything to add as far as like, we also talked about children and how sometimes they'll flinch if they're being abused, when someone goes to touch them or not in an inappropriate way, but obviously like the
Right.
triggers.
Right.
um,
Mm-hmm.
Also, we talked about how someone may have a silent tongue all of a sudden when they're in a group of people, when before they were with this person they were lively and had a whole lot to say or were very energetic or independent. That's a sign. So we talked about a lot of different things.
Well, I mean, when it comes to your kids, sorry, you gotta know your kids, right? So when you know your kids, then you know the pattern of behavior, and you should understand and learn when there's a shift in the behavior. Um, if we're talking directly about abuse, you would learn those things. So, like you said, the flinching. Like I know, I was sending my daughter to daycare, and she verbalizes, but not a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell like she's very straightforward in the sense of if I like you, I like you, and she's not scared of nobody. So if I see, like one of the things I started noticing was like, so I have this thing where I don't want nobody to hit my child, right? Until I feel like she's of age where we can both have a conversation and communicate these things. And at that point, then we can proceed with a certain, punishment. But I would notice, which, even thinking about it now pisses me off because, so after going to daycare a certain amount of time, if somebody does something, she takes their hand and
Mm-hmm.
pops it. And
Wow.
my older kids are big. My older kids are bigger, so I'm not
Right.
popping their hands, and I don't pop
Right.
her hands. So that either leaves one or two things: the people in my house or the people outside. And it very much looks like it stems from outside the house.
Right.
Um, so I noticed that. I noticed, you know, like you said, just to point to a few more things that for me definitely were red flags and made me say, okay, you know what? Yeah, I was right because initially I was like, I'm not sending her nowhere. Just let her mom stay at home and just take care of everything. And,
Mm-hmm.
and because again, when you see the things going on in this world, whether it's daycares having baby fights and betting on it to,
What? I've
just
never heard
people.
that one.
You never seen that? I've seen multiple,
No.
a lot of places where the workers are getting arrested because they will sit there and let the babies fight and bet on it, and um, or let one child bully and beat up the other kids, or go to sleep and let the kids fend for themselves, or they're so busy doing whatever they're doing, they just kind of let kids whatever, and the kids eat things and just unfortunately, like going back to the beginning of the show where you were talking about the village, unfortunately, if you don't have that, people are not going to care for your child like you and or your village, and that's
That's
just a
true.
fact, unfortunately. So when you start taking a child and putting them in certain environments, you're taking a chance, and unfortunately, everybody doesn't have the privilege where financially you can say, you know what? I don't want for 2, 3 years, 4 years for my child to not go to a daycare or
Right.
this or that. and you stay home and take care of the baby. I mean, everybody's not in that situation, but I would say, and my advice would be, if you can't do that, make sure you pay attention to your child, especially at a young
Exactly.
age, because young or old, like even my kids, I tell them all the time, they're really bad criminals because I notice that like they tell on themselves.
Yeah, that's true.
So
That's
if
true.
you notice your kid, if you know your kids, then like like you know the change in behavior. It's almost equivalent to adults, right? Like if you're dating somebody
Hmm.
and you're less hypothetically, let's say your man never buys you flowers, or you maybe even in bedroom he doesn't do this and he doesn't do that. All of a sudden he wants to get up and put on cologne. He wants to wear different
Yeah,
colors. He
you
wants to
notice
switch
that
his. You notice these things. You're like,
right
wait a
away.
minute. So so most people tell on themselves. So um, so I would say watch your kids heavy, especially when you put them in different environments.
Right.
Keep that open communication with your child to say, hey, listen, if this and that happens. One thing I could say about my kids is they know, I'm the coolest person, but when it comes to my family, I go from a nice teddy bear to it don't matter. I will kill somebody, and
No, I
they
feel
tell me.
that.
So they know, like even my daughter now she's 3, she does turn 3, but now she knows, like she's known since day one. Like anytime she has an issue, like I know the difference of when she says dad, and when she says dad, get him, she expects me to hurt that person at 3.
Wow.
And because she doesn't fear anything, because she knows there's repercussions. If you deal with me, you got to deal with that.
Right.
And that's the way that I want it to be, not in a bully sense, but in the sense that my parent is here to protect me and my
And I
daughter.
like that. I like that.
So, I tell people, yeah, I'm always gonna. I want it for my kids to always understand and know. I'm not a bully, because most of the time I've definitely changed in terms of temper, because I walk away from most stuff because I know how far I can take it, how far I'll go. But
Right.
the moment I feel you're stepping that line and you're playing with my family,
Hmm.
there's nothing to nobody that's gonna stop me. So just notice those things. Make your kids feel protected so they never feel scared. Because I think, even touching back to the previous topic of last week, I think sometimes our kids are afraid to come to us. Not afraid, but they don't feel that connection to come to us and say, hey, I went to this
Comfortable.
place and
Right.
I feel it. Yeah, absolutely. And we have to, even if, like, if you have a two-parent home, sometimes kids are more comfortable with this parent than that parent. Make sure at least
Right.
they have a connection to one of them. And even sometimes, if not a parent, maybe it's an aunt, maybe it's an uncle. Make sure your kid is aligned with somebody to have that connection. And
Right. What
they'll
about
always be
the,
able.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, no, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say the second topic was, um, would you report it? I was talking about like when I've seen scenarios, and then to double on top of that, I brought it up. If you wouldn't report it, are there other ways that you would handle that situation if you were there or if you witnessed it? And there's reasons why I ask these questions, and we'll talk about that. But for me, I know my husband has been around certain scenarios and he'll step in and be like, look, no, you're not going to do this in front of me. You don't hit a woman or whatever. Um, but I've been in other situations before my spouse where I've domestic violence situations with family members there and no one did anything. And so it's like, how are they handling that? Or if are they at all? Are you loading? Hold on. Oh, we lost him. So basically, what we've talked about so far is the village and what it looks like in 2020. If anyone ever wants to chime in, that's fine. You can. Um, as far as abuse, we were talking about signs of abuse, and then also we were talking about, would you report the abuse, And are there other ways to stop the abuse? So give me just a second. Born to Reach says he's back, and so is Q's Flavors. Give me just a second. I want to let Q's Flavors finish his thought, and then I'm gonna let Born to Reach join me. Thanks for joining me, Born to Reach, and thanks for hanging in there. Give me just a second. So I don't know. I always worry about these things or wonder about them because I've had the experience where I've been in these scenarios or I've watched these scenarios and had to say something or had to report something, or the family in toxic families we've talked about before, the family allows the behavior. And in most scenarios, when you're in a domestic abuse relationship, the abuser usually will take you away from your family and they will add in their comfort zones around you to make sure that you're not leaving that situation. It happens a lot. So it's like, if I have nobody and then you're surrounding me around these people, like, they start to try to attach to you as well and make you feel comfortable. But at the same time, these are the same people watching you or compelling you to stay or watching you get your butt kicked. So I'm asking, I guess, from a point of view of the family, when you're watching these scenarios happening, if you're not reporting it, what are you doing to make it better? And I also talked about before that in olden days, the men of the family would step in, depending on what family it was, and kind of have a powwow with, what are you doing? You need to do better, this, that. We don't have that. I don't see that much anymore. I feel like I say a lot, we got work to do. But I was just wondering, from a male's point of view, being the female, I know how it is. But as a male, I can't answer that.
Okay. So this okay. I'm gonna sum it up real quick.
Okay.
So the first thing is, as far as myself, each situation is different. You have to know when to call the cops. You have to know when to step in. You have to know when to step in enough, separate them, and give space for them to tomorrow, without getting yourself becoming a victim of the situation. And the reason why I say that is, okay, so for example, calling authorities is me understanding, and like if I walk into a situation and I see, okay, this is not normal for this person, this is not what the person is normally going through, and they're legit trying to get away from it, then yes, of course, myself, if I feel like, what, maybe this person can overtake both of us, or maybe they got the one up, maybe got a gun, maybe got whatever. Call the authorities, let them take care of the situation. Person gets to some type of safety, or do whatever's necessary to get them to safety, or in that sense. The second thing is, when dealing with whether or not, like, if I'm not going to call the cops and I'm going to just get involved, which I've done it as a teenager. I've witnessed it so many times, where people, and I've fought people's husbands, I've fought people's family members. Like, I've realized, like, for a lot of people, it's a scary thing. And like you were saying, like, it's so much to it. I don't think that people realize the build up to it. So first it's the mind manipulation. Then from the mind manipulation, which makes them feel like nobody else is there for you. Only I'm here for you. Look what I'm doing for you. And it could be the smallest, stupidest things. And normally they prey on people who have some type of, low self-esteem or something like that. And when they prey on that, now you feel like, man, you're so amazing to me. Now they start to show, even if it's not real, the negative things in people. And it could be the smallest thing. See, I would have never left you at the bus stop. I would have never made sure. I would have got you a 10-piece nugget, not a 5-piece. Just the stupidest things.
Looking better.
Once they get that, absolutely. Once they get that, then it goes to, okay, now it's just me and you against the world. And then once they got you trapped, then the abuse begins. And you feel like now they've already implanted that nobody cares into you.
That's correct.
So now, who can I help? Who can I call to help when nobody cares but myself? And he's doing this because I made, and that's the other thing. Part of the mind manipulate. You're making me beat you.
Yes.
You're making me do X, Y, and Z.
That
Everything
happens.
is your fault. So now you start to beat yourself up. Well,
you start to feel like I did this. I'm the cause of this. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I mean, I've done so much in terms of that, including more, which I'll share with you behind the scenes, just because it's my business.
No, that's fine.
But in terms of, even how it shaped and changed my life and how I'm in the situation I am now. But so from it's, I thank God I've never seen my mother go through it, but my mother has been one of those people who, she grew up in a household where her stepfather, like, people did that, so she had to. So I think it changed her. My mother was always a fighter, so she's always like, you know what, not today, not happening.
Right,
So what would
right.
happen is she would bring other people to the house. So if other people were in trouble, so I've seen it firsthand how to protect people, how to get engaged and not just look away. Now, just real quick on what you touched on, saying how back in the day men would get involved. I've actually seen the opposite, and even today, where a lot of men will be like let's say a girl is in the room and the guy's stomping out. Like, I've been in the room where it's going on. The guys be like, "It ain't my business. I ain't gonna. I'm gonna be
Yes,
fighting with him next." I'm like,
that
what?
right there.
I'm
That
like,
right
y'all
there.
soft.
It
Like, and I
happens a
have to
lot.
go stop that. And I'm like, nah. And you know what? Who I applaud in these situations? The women, because you know why? Even not even just in abuse situation. I've seen in street fights, a person could be getting jumped, getting stomped and stabbed, and you know who would be the first one a lot of times? The females,
No
and they're not
females.
as strong as the person they're trying to defend or
Right.
the attacker, and they will put themselves on the line. And I've seen guys scared to stop a fight, and a girl step in and be like, no.
Right.
And you know what? So for me, I respect that. So, yeah, I mean, again, myself, I would definitely get involved, whether it's law wise, and I'm not really like the biggest person on calling police, and then when it comes to domestic situations, you have to know the people, because again, I've always
Yeah.
almost thrown my life away multiple times, like, beat a guy up, ready to go way left with the situation. I'm gonna just say that, and then not even a week later, they're back lovey-dovey like nothing ever
And let
happened.
me
And I'm
say
like,
something like
what?
about that, because I think people start to feel differently about the situation when you, like you said, they step in and then
Mm-hmm.
the next week, okay, so let's that's basically the next step anyways, why they stay. But let's
Mm-hmm.
talk about it. I would love for people to say, or stop saying, well, they stay, so they deserve that. Please
Right.
stop saying that.
Right.
Please
I
stop,
don't
because
feel that.
you don't know. And I'm not saying, I'm just saying, I've heard it so many times that I'm like, you
No,
don't
no,
know.
no. But,
You have no idea. You don't know how that person was raised. And same thing for the male. Like,
mm-hmm.
if you are doing something like that, like I've said before, trauma introduces trauma. So if somebody is
Mm-hmm.
feeling comfortable enough to beat the crap out of somebody else, that came from somewhere. It's a control issue, but where does that
Absolutely.
come from? So, like, for me, all of these topics,
Absolutely.
they lead to something else. But there's a difference between being cautious of it and knowing what you're doing, and then doing
Right.
something because you're not conscious of it. So there's people who are raised that way and feel like, well, or even are taught that way, and they feel
Well,
like, oh, well, I was taught if I need to keep my woman in line, this is what I do, and they're
absolutely.
taught that way. There's other
Absolutely.
people who actually, I'm sorry, I just want to finish this one thought. There's other people
No,
who actually
absolutely.
will say
Absolutely.
that I know I'm doing this, and those people need help.
Absolutely.
And they're wrong for it, because if you know you're doing this and you can be accountable for it and you still do it, you need help.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And I'm agreeing with everything you're saying, because it's totally right. And again, just understand, and this is why it's so important for parents when it comes to their household and family structure with the men. And what we do in the household is so important. What the presentation that we show and the example that
Right.
we lead. So one thing about me that I'm very, very, very big on is, I'm not a perfect person. I try to tell, I've said from the beginning, like, I don't even like arguing in front of my kids. I just feel like,
Mm-hmm.
one, a lot of times most stuff is stupid and it just escalates.
Uh-oh, we lost him. Okay. So I'm gonna bring him back to finish his comment, but I am gonna try to join in my very late guest, Born to Reach, and you know I'm gonna give you hell, so don't even try me. Why you so late?
Long story.
Anyways, you've heard, I feel like, a lot of what's going on. Basically just going back and forth about abuse and
Mm-hmm.
whether to report it, signs of abuse. And then I think now we're just kind of getting into why they stay. And then I wanted
Okay.
to try to cover, if I can, as well, because we got enough time, I think 20 minutes.
Hmm.
Why some people have left? What gave them that courage to leave? What was it? Because I could speak for myself as to why I got out of some of those relationships. But um, for you, give me a little bit of, like, I know you and I talked personally, and you did tell me that there are certain scenarios where you would actually step in instead of calling the authorities. And to be clear, when I said I would call the authorities, it was people I don't know. This was just random acts where I'm like, I don't know what's going on here, but this person is getting beat up, or somebody's getting beat up, and I need to have somebody intercede in that. I'm not going to do it because me as a female, I'm not getting in the middle of a random situation. However, somebody needs to do something about that.
Right. Um,
Oh,
well,
and
see, it
sorry.
doesn't even
Hi
have to be.
everybody who's new and hasn't heard from my mouth before. Hi everybody. And this is JC.
What's up, though? Um,
What's up,
no,
though?
but it's not even necessarily. What was I about to say? See, you got me all off my train of thought. Um, what was the question again? Run that back.
The question we were talking about was, would you report, and what are other
Oh,
ways?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a situation where I won't report because it's somebody I don't know. I've
Hmm.
been in situations where I've seen a public, disturbance or whatever you want to call it of complete strangers, and I'm like, nah, I'm not going for it. Um, and so it's just, it's just a natural reaction to me, whether I know you or I don't know you.
Right.
As a man, I'm not about to allow you to do none of that in front of me. I don't care who you are. You ain't got to know me. It's just not going down. I've even been around situations where it's family members, and I've had to jump in a situation and be like, nah, bro, that's not going down. And I just had to let them know. And and it's something crazy because people who are in these type of situations, oftentimes, and it's not all the time, but for the majority of the part, when you see people in these domestic type of situations, especially from a male perspective, a lot of men have an easy time being the aggressor towards women. But when the man jumps in, it's a whole different story. And
Hmm.
I'm just the type of petty dude where I'm gonna test the waters anyway when I jump in
Right.
between it. Cause they'll be like, man, nah, man, move out the way. I'm like, what? You ain't gonna hit me. So, I mean,
Yeah, I
that's
don't
just what it
understand
is.
that. I don't understand why
Like,
they
yeah,
feel it's okay to hit a woman, but you can't stand to a man. That, I think, to me, I'm sorry to say it, but it's a punk move. I'm gonna
it
just
is a
say it
punk
how it
move.
is.
I
I'm gonna
mean,
call.
he already knows in that moment that she's the weaker of the two for one. He's so used to being able to have that kind of reign and control over. So it becomes almost a second nature to a lot of abusers to be able to be able to wield that type of
Control. Yeah.
control and authority over someone. But when they get into a situation where it's with somebody who they're not accustomed to having that type of control, or they don't even
Hmm.
know how this person might respond or what's on the inside of that person. Now that's now you met your match. Like, so what are you going to
Right.
do? You know what I'm saying? And um, for me, it's just like you said, it's a sign of weakness. Weak people who feel like they have to be in control over a situation.
Right.
Um, Even outside of a domestic realm, it's a real sign of weakness when you can't yield and um, be led or be taught or anything or be impressioned
Right.
upon where you have to have that dominating control or whatever the case may be. It's really a sign of weakness and insecurity.
I agree.
A lot of men who are in these domestic situations are weak. They are insecure. They are lacking in something. And realistically, the reason why they wield that type of control and power and manipulation over the female is because at the end of the day, that's their most prized possession.
Mm. Property
Yeah,
versus relationship.
that's their most prized possession. And so when I can't control certain scenarios and situations in my life, then I begin to try to wield and control and manipulate the
Wow.
people that are attached or closest to me. I mean, we see that in most domestic situations. Um, it's a sense of insecurity.
I agree.
The man is not stable in his mindset. He realizes and recognizes his flaws, and so it's a way to passive aggressively, exude his behavior and what he's feeling on the inside on somebody else because he can't tear himself up. He's already doing that, and so
Right.
a lot of times what we see is people who are dealing with this type of situation is because they're eating themselves alive on the inside and they need a place
Mm,
to let that out. Um, and when you're a broken person, and there's a truth to the saying that hurt people hurt people. And when you're inherently a broken person, hurting people becomes your whole mentality. That becomes
wow.
your second nature. Love is not a part of your DNA because you never don't know what love is, and so um, brokenness just becomes a part of your behavior patterns, and so you start to
I'm gonna grab
bleed
my
on
charger.
others.
I'll be right back. I'm not leaving. Keep going.
Oh, okay. I'm about to say, all right. Who
No.
was that? Erica Badu. Knowing you on live and your phone ain't charged. No.
Don't do
Um,
me. Don't do me.
but
I'm taking care of
but
it.
people but people who are inherently broken, they will project that brokenness on other people. You bleed and you see it like I don't know. You've been to church.
Yes.
You can tell what oftentimes when you go to church, you can tell when the pastor's having a bad week or when
Yeah.
he upset with the people. He'll get up there, he'll bleed on the people. If he's hurt or he's in his feelings, 9 times out of 10, if he doesn't have
Wow.
the discipline and the control over himself to deal with his issues, he'll project that upon the people that he's supposed to be loving. And
Wow.
that's the same thing that happens in these type of situations when people will say, well, I love you and all this other kind of stuff, but love is not just something that you just throw around in words. It's something that you do in deeds. And when people have a pattern of aggressing you, um, be one, how can they love you when they don't love themselves?
That part.
You have to be it to give it. That's just the bottom line. And people portray and they exude what's on the inside of them. And that's not just in the love department, but that's with everything that's sitting and that they've been harboring, even from their childhood, past relationships and things of that nature. They exude what's on the inside of them. I've gotten into even some relationships, just in dating, um, with women, and because they're so broken from their past relationships and things of that nature, they project that on you, even though
Right.
you may not have done anything wrong.
So that's
And
good
so
that
my
you bring that
mindset
up.
is like, I'm not about to unpack your ex. That's
Right.
just not what's going to
No.
happen. You need
Agreed.
to get healing
Hmm.
before you enter into any situation because you don't want your damage to become somebody else's damage.
That part. So I think
Right.
that you kind of unraveling why the men kind of do what they're doing on that part of it. I think the last thing that we were going to cover, that kind of goes into why they stay too, because like you started uncovering it already. Some of the reasons why women stay are because, like you said, they've had those relationships before, and it becomes. I know someone said it becomes normal. It becomes a normal behavior, or they watched it
Mm-hmm.
with their parents. So it's
Mm-hmm.
normalized. It becomes when something becomes normalized to you, you just kind of deal with it. I have been in situations where I go to family members and they may tell me, "Well, what did you do?" If not only he is telling you what did you do, but when you go to someone who could possibly, maybe there's a background of abuse and they're telling you what did you do, then you start to question, well, what am I doing? Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
that's it. And then, like I said, when you're surrounded by people and these people are his people, and they start to say, oh, well, why would you leave? He loves you, or they're pushing that on you to stay. Then you feel like that's your only comfort zone. Sometimes that'll make you stay. Or your mindset. Where's your mindset? Maybe you used to be so confident, but you can't find that confidence anymore since this person started breaking you down. It's not as easy to leave. So that's why I said before when I was talking to Q, I said, I feel like it's not right when people say, it's incorrect for people to say, well, she's just going to stay anyway. There's no point. which I
Hmm.
agree, you have to be ready to leave that situation, but it doesn't make that victim their fault.
Right.
It's not, that's not always the
Right.
case. What
So
about
wait,
you?
are
Why
you,
do you think why do you think you stay is the question.
wait, so let me understand what he was he saying that it's pointless to say something
No, no,
because he's
no.
gonna stay or
He
no?
wasn't
Okay.
saying that. He wasn't saying that at all.
Okay.
He was saying that he agrees with me that people shouldn't say that, because there are a lot of people who say, "Well, I'm not going to step in because she's just going to stay with him," or
Right.
vice versa. Also, some the 10 minutes is up. Is I wanted to also talk about some of the ladies, y'all might not like me, but when a man, when you're putting your hands on a man, the man has not hit you, and then you're calling yourself being angry or being defensive towards something they did to you, and you put your hands on a man regardless of how strong you are or he is, that's not right. And so if you feel like, because heard several people argue that, well, they're not as strong as you, so they shouldn't hit you back. You shouldn't be putting your hands on a man. Let me just say that as a woman, you
Hmm.
shouldn't be putting your hands on a man, period. I don't care. Like, if he hauls off and slaps the shit out you back, you, in some scenarios, I feel like you deserve that. Don't put your hands on no man or anybody. My mom
Hmm.
raised me, if somebody don't touch you, you don't touch them. And I live by that. Don't put your hands on
Right.
somebody. Now, am I saying that because she got angry and hit him, that he should automatically just wild off and beat the crap out of her? No, that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying, as a mom of a child that is a boy, don't put your
Hmm.
hands on my child,
Right.
period. And
Right.
same, like, it's not different if you're a female doing it. And I think
Right.
men have that perception of, well, you got to be a punk if you hitting on a female. No, nobody should put their hands on nobody. If you can't have a conversation, that's a problem already.
Well, it's a sign of weakness on any side, whether it's a woman or a man doing it. Abuse is abuse, and this is the one of those arenas where we got to level the playing field,
Right.
because it doesn't make it right in any respect. And a man who does not accept it or tolerate it or speaks out against it does not make him weak. It's just him acknowledging that there's a behavior that's going on or that's taking place in this relationship or in this situation
Yeah.
that is not conducive to anything fruitful. But I want to circle back to something that you said because I want to offer some alternative perspective to it as well. Because I agree wholeheartedly with what you guys were saying with regard to, you shouldn't stop, trying to convey a certain message because that person is going to stay.
Right.
I agree with that 1,000%. If you're a real friend or you really love that person, you're going to speak out on something. That's just the bottom line. But on the flip side,
Hmm.
um, you also have to treat some things with some distance as well,
I agree.
because at the end of the day, unfortunately, for some people, it doesn't matter what you say, no matter what you do. What I've learned is that being overly involved in certain situations only causes people to stay longer,
I agree.
or it pushes them further into that because
Hmm.
now they feel like, oh, y'all hating on what we got, or y'all just trying to break us apart, or especially don't let you be single trying to break out somebody out of a
It's
domestic
true.
relationship because
It's
now
true.
you lonely and miserable and you want somebody to be miserable with you when that's not the case. At the end of the day, people are going to make the decisions that they make. You plant that seed, you water that seed, you love and you encourage and you pray that they get out of that situation. But unfortunately, there are some lessons that people are only going to learn on their own.
I agree with
There's
that.
nothing that we can say, and you can give them all the life examples that you want. Personally, I'm a person who would love to live through the examples of other people. If they made a mistake before me, I'm going to pull on their wisdom so I don't have to make that same mistake.
I agree.
But then there are those people who reject wisdom because they want to live their life. And when people have that mentality and that mindset, it's best for you to treat them and love them from a distance than to be up close, because you don't want to get yourself into a place where you're so overly involved in their situation that you drive a wedge of division and separation between y'all.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, when they come out of that situation, they're still going to need to lean and depend on
Amen.
you.
That's true.
But if you got so involved that you severed your relationship with them, now they have nowhere to turn when they come out of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And when they see that they're lonely and they severed that relationship with you, guess where they're going to turn
To you.
to go feel accepted again? They're going to go right back into that toxic
I
situation.
agree with that, but I think in some aspects of it, like you said, you don't stop the behavior. You continue to let them know you're loved. But I've done that with some people who I knew were going through that. I had to tell them at the end of the day, look, that's your situation and I respect you and I'm not going to disrespect that person or your, when you're ready, because like you said, a person has to be ready to step away. Otherwise, like you said, you can talk to your blue in the face, and it's not going to change a thing because they've already made their mind that, maybe they feel like they're a writer or whatever, or he's telling them, well, he's manipulating them, another reason why they're staying. And so he's using you as the tool to keep her, in bondage or whatever. So sometimes you do have to step away so that they can see it on their own without you pushing it in their face or telling them what's right. So be accountable for a certain point, but then you're right. At some point, you have to love them for a distance and do what you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's with any situation, though, not just with this situation, but with a lot of things. Sometimes even with forgiveness, you forgive people, you walk away, you give them space, you do what's right for your peace as well. So it's not saying that you have to overly, but it's also not being blind to it as well,
Right.
or saying something about it if you
Well,
have
they
to.
know you. They're not ignorant. They know you see it. Especially if you've been vocal about it.
I'm not talking about the friend. I'm talking about
Mm-hmm.
the family of the people who are doing these behaviors.
Oh yeah,
Stop
for
being
sure.
blind to that, because there's a lot of the
Right.
times where they're being blind to it, and that's not cool.
Mm-hmm.
I don't respect a person who sits there and watches somebody get beat like that and high fives their cousin or whatever. I'm not for that. I've been in those situations. That's not cool. And
Right, but what I've also learned about those people is that it's not that they're blind to it; they're accustomed to it.
hmm,
It's a difference between being blind to it because you don't want to believe a certain thing about certain people, but some people are just accustomed to it. And it's not that they're accustomed to it, so to speak, because they're accepting of the behavior, is that oftentimes they're either victims or the aggressor of similar behaviors. When people are can see something like this going on and they just allow it to transpire and they're turning the blind eye, so to speak, to it, and a lot of times it's because it's familiar to them.
right.
They see it all too well. They either got it going on in their home or it was a part of their upbringing.
I agree.
Maybe it ignites a past trauma on the inside of them that they don't want to deal with. I mean, there's so many reasons why people turn a blind eye to certain things. But at the end of the day, I get what you're saying. You shouldn't speak up on it. But some people, I'm just saying that some people don't because they're accustomed to it.
Right.
And realistically, if my sin is the same as your sin, and I'm not doing anything about my sin, then what right do I have to say anything to you about yours?
That's cool. That's good. That's true. That is true. These are
Right.
facts. So what I would like to do is, we're coming up on 2 minutes, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and save this live. But for those of you who want to tune in, because I'm not done with this conversation, I think I'm going to do a part 2. So what I will have to do, stay tuned. Don't leave, Born. Don't disappear on me. Don't, Born to Reach. I'm talking to you. You see me. You hear me. Don't disappear. Because
I'm not disappearing. I got real life stuff going on over here. That's what was taking me so long.
Okay. So
Yeah.
give me a second. I'm going to go ahead and save this live so that people, if they want to tune back in, but then I want to start a part 2, which will be, one, we can continue on why did they leave, and also not why did they leave, why did they stay, and what made them leave. I would love to, if we could get to it. For me, I'm going to talk about why I left, but I would love to hear other people, if they're ready to talk about it, to just give It can be one word: my child, my this, my that, whatever. Why they leave, or why they feel like people finally give up and leave those situations. And then I'll talk about a little bit of what it took for me to leave as well. So 38 seconds. Stay tuned. I'm gonna go ahead and hit you back when I come on. Let me save this video real quick.
All right, I got to make a call, so I'm going to let you talk for a couple of minutes and then I'll be on.
All right, sounds good.
All right.